This episode of Fluid Power Forum is sponsored by IFPE Motion Solutions Incorporated, the leader at engineering electronics into fluid power distribution. IFPE spans the 13 central states from Minnesota to Texas. For more information, visit ifpeusa.com.
And the refreshing thing was that the conference really seems to be designed for the attendees.
Welcome to Fluid Power Forum, a podcast of the National Fluid Power Association. I'm your host, Eric Lenke, and it's my job to interview interesting people who are moving fluid power technology forward. If you'd like to be part of our show, we ask that you follow us on Twitter. You can find us there at the NFPA. And make sure to share those interesting and innovative uses of fluid power with our hashtag #OnlyFluidPowerCan. That is one of the ways that we source topics for our show. If you see an interesting application of fluid power and you want to learn more about it, you can share it on social media with that hashtag #OnlyFluidPowerCan. And you just might hear it discussed on a future episode of Fluid Power Forum. Also, please subscribe to our show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a lot of the other podcatching services. Wherever you find us, please subscribe and then give us a quick rating. Those ratings really do help more and more of our friends in the industry hear about the show and join in on these important conversations. On today's show, our guest is Adam Kimmel. Adam is the principal and founder of ASK Consulting Solutions, a technical content writing and strategy firm. Adam has nearly 20 years of experience as a practicing engineer, as an R&D manager, and as a technical consultant with expertise in automotive, mobile, industrial, manufacturing technology, hydrogen, alternative energy, and electronics. Adam was recently commissioned by the organizers of IFPE, the International Fluid Power Exposition, to write a white paper on technology advancements that are driving the fluid power market forward. And so we invited him into our forum to learn more about those findings and what they might mean for the technology that's likely to be on display at the IFPE trade show. So Adam, welcome to Fluid Power Forum.
Thanks very much for having me, Eric. Great to be here.
I'm glad to have you. We're all getting excited for the IFPE show. As of the time that we're recording this, it is just a few months off into the future in March of 2023. And so I know that your white paper spells out market trends and technology trends that are shaping that market. We certainly want to hear more about that. Before we go there, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. I gave a very brief overview of your background in that introduction. What kinds of positions have you held during your career?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. I have kind of a broad, background, but much of it has been in R&D. So I've worked in research and development, designing heat exchangers and components for fuel cell products and, kind of hydrogen reactors and air recuperators, things of that nature, automotive EV exchangers and refrigeration components. And in addition, I've had a few tours in supply chain and procurement just to kind of balance out the back end of the product development cycle.
Right.
And I guess through all of that, I've sort of figured out that if you develop something really interesting and no one understands it, there's no value to it at all.
Sure.
So that's really how I got into writing.
When did you take the leap to start your own consulting company?
Oh, it's been, late 2014 now. Somehow 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It just became something where I would get a request for, hey, can you 3 bullet point this? And well, no, not really. So what if I wrote up a little summary, and the summary evolved into a slide deck or a little conference paper. And through that, I realized kind of what formats seemed to land better with what audience, and what's the best way to communicate the great work that development engineers do.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't, if the management can't grab it, then it really isn't going to go anywhere.
So is it primarily technical writing projects that you do through that consulting firm, or do you have other clients and other projects that you work on?
Yeah, I do a little bit of consulting, technical consulting, but it is primarily content writing. So white papers are my bread and butter, technical blogs and articles, case studies, and I'll do occasionally website copy, but I really like the thought leadership, more product agnostic industry trends and things. And
Yeah.
so I evolved that into strategy. And if you have this complicated story to tell, how many pieces should you write? What format should they be? What channels would you use? That
Right.
kind of thing. And that's really elevated things to get a more comprehensive content view.
That's great. Well, I've had the pleasure of reading the white paper that we're going to talk about, and it is a great overview of trends that are impacting our market, a lead-in, if you will, to some of the technology advances that people are likely to see at that trade show. And we'll certainly post a link to where people can download that white paper in the show notes for this episode, so everybody else can take advantage of that opportunity as well. I'm kind of curious about why it was commissioned. I said it was commissioned by the organizers of IFPE, the trade show. What was the purpose in their doing so? What was it they were looking to uncover or for you to do as part of that project?
I think the original ask was to try to get the voice of a conference attendee. So, I mean, my background, I haven't spent my entire career in fluid power, but certainly in adjacent industries and know enough about it to speak to what I would want to see at a conference like this. And the refreshing thing was that the conference really seems to be designed for the attendees. I mean, making sure that it isn't just a networking opportunity. That's a key part of any conference, but that the participants, the trade show, presenters, and the content that the attendees hear is valuable, so that it's time well spent, learning about these key trends, because there's certainly enough change in the industry to talk about. So there's no reason to just go out somewhere and have dinner. Let's uncover some of these trends and advise, how we might adapt to it as industry participants.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a wealth of great information about those very aspects of it. IFPE is a trade show that focuses on fluid power. Obviously, that's embedded in the term International Fluid Power Exposition. But as many people know, it's co-located with a much larger trade show, ConExpo ConAg, which is I think the largest trade show in North America, but its focus is on mobile equipment of all different kinds. And so there's a natural synergy that exists between the fluid power solutions that people can see at IFPE and the actual machines that they wind up on the ConExpo side of the show. So I know a lot of the mega trends that you've identified in the white paper kind of deal with that broader off-road machinery market as well as just fluid power. And maybe we can start there. Can you describe for us what are some of the mega trends that you describe in more detail in the white paper?
Sure. And mega trends is always a term that's a little bit ambiguous. How mega should we get here? And I think the three I talked about influence many industries, even beyond the broader, fluid power one.
Yeah.
But the first one is population growth and urbanization. Exponential population growth, people generally understand that. But I think, we know that there's been a deceleration in the rate of population growth, but it still increases 80 million people a year.
Right.
So a deceleration to 80 million people more than last year is still just an astronomically high number. And in addition to that, this move to urban areas was, I think, one of the most interesting things. Sometimes you learn a lot by writing these papers, and urbanization, I looked into that, and in the US, over 80% of the US is urbanized. I don't think that was incredibly surprising to me, but what was the fact that the global average is only 56%.
Sure, right.
And Asia, many of the countries in Asia are below that, meaning the momentum behind accelerating urbanization is going to speed up. So over time, a disproportionately large amount of urbanization is going to happen. And we can talk about what that means for fluid power, but that really, I think, will determine, how big should equipment be? How, loud can it be? This kind of thing. That starts to matter when people are living together more and more.
Yeah.
Another one is infrastructure replacement. This has been a topic of some legislation here in the U.S. There was I think $1 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was passed to address some of this. But if, you drive around in different states, you can see bridges and roads and things in desperate need of replacement.
Yeah.
Well, all of that has, direct correlation to fluid power. Fluid power has to help propel that change to replace it. And the third is climate change and regulatory. And so that's kind of a combination. But climate change has really started to become a central theme in a lot of sectors. Greenhouse gas emissions and increasing legislation in various areas are really a point of emphasis globally. There are conferences like the COP26 meetings that happened recently in Scotland, and some other global summits and regional summits to address climate change. And now regulatory pressure is driving that. So innovation is very often driven by regulatory pressure. So I would say those three are probably the biggest drivers of the changes.
Well, and it sounds to me like those three trends are linked to one another. I mean, one feeds into the next, right? I mean, the more people that we have on the planet and the more they're trying to move into urbanized settings, the more the infrastructure that exists there is going to get stressed and needs to be replaced or built up. And the more of that activity that goes on, the more greenhouse gases are pushed out, and that feeds into the climate change thing. So am I seeing connections that don't exist, or did I interpret that right?
No, I think that's a good observation.
Yeah.
I mean, a good trend is one that's obvious after you hear it. And so I think when those three come out, you can kind of look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense. Those things should be related. And I would expect if this is true, then this would probably happen, and then this. And so given those kind of factors, you can start to see what should happen to mitigate some of those things. I mean, what about this pressure of, constantly emitting carbon? What can be done about that? And when there's more people in smaller areas, how might we change the way we live, the way we farm, the way we house ourselves and things to try to deal with that, so we don't try to stop growth. You're going against nature somehow at that point with exponential population growth. So you have to absorb the growth in a responsible way for the planet.
Right. So when we look at those kind of mega trends, as you said, those are kind of non-specific to any particular industry. Those are affecting everybody. Those are affecting the whole planet, right? So let's look at them through the lens of maybe mobile equipment to start with. Like what kind of demands are we seeing in the changing marketplace on mobile equipment as a result of those trends?
Yeah, I mean, growing populations are always going to, that's kind of the first mega trend. You always are going to need more from less because the population is going to outpace the equipment. So getting more performance out of the same asset is critical. So, innovations and developments to boost production and performance are probably going to be a major opportunity.
Right.
Speed is another one. I mean, anytime somebody realizes they need an infrastructure project, it's probably 30 years too late, and they need to do it yesterday.
Right.
So how do you get more speed out of a process? And in addition, having downtime is an inefficiency. It's a waste. So it should be minimized whenever possible. And as you look to boost speed, minimizing downtime is a way to do that. But having more simple maintenance and ways to fix it, in addition, being able to predict what part might fail and when is another way to reduce downtime. It then also extends the life of some assets.
Yeah.
So, there are a few others. I mean, I think quality and safety factor in there, sort of the point of interrelated opportunities. I mean, anytime there's a quality issue, what's the adage? There's never time to do it right, but always time to do it twice. Well, okay, take care of quality on the front end, and often safety is addressed on the back end of that. And so defect rates go down, operational efficiencies go up, you use less energy. I mean, all of these factors start to address each one of the mega trends.
It's interesting, just to reflect on some of that, it's again, a good overview of the demands that mobile equipment manufacturers are finding themselves needing to provide to their own customers. NFPA does a biannual technology road mapping process where we work with our customer organizations to better identify what some of those trends are as well. And I'm hearing a lot of synergy in what you're describing with those findings as well. That they need greater efficiency out of their machines. They need more productivity. They need less maintenance. They need them to be more durable. All of those kinds of factors are I think probably have always been present, but they seem to be even more important because of some of the mega trends that you're describing.
Well, and I think with the rate of development, it just becomes harder to wait and harder to deal with waste. You need, if you invest in something, you want that to be 100% valuable and immediate. And that's kind of the ideal state, to kind of think of it in those terms. Well, how do you get as close to that as possible? And technologies that enable that are always going to be, I think, at the forefront.
Right. So we'll continue with our guest in just a moment, but I want to take time here to tell you a little bit more about IFPE, the International Fluid Power Exposition. IFPE is the place where you'll learn everything you need to help your company stay at the forefront of the megatrends affecting your business and industry. From sensor technology and data analytics to robotics and automation, you'll see the latest innovations in fluid power that will help your machines and applications achieve your technology, performance, and business goals. Only at IFPE can you have in-depth technical conversations with other engineers and executives to spark new ideas, or talk with suppliers about your specific challenges and the solutions they offer, or find new suppliers and new ways of doing things, or attend innovative education classes and sessions covering the latest fluid power topics and industry trends, including college courses providing PDHs. No other trade show brings as many sectors of the fluid power, power transmission, and motion control industries together in one place. And this event happens only once every 3 years, in conjunction with ConExpo ConAg, the largest international gathering for the construction industries. Our next IFPE show will be held March 14 through 18, 2023 in Las Vegas, Nevada. To learn more and to reserve your place, visit IFPE.com. So, Adam, the environment that we've been discussing, actually poses some opportunities for those machine builders and for the fluid power industry as well. And I know that your white paper goes into what some of those opportunities are and some of the new technologies that we're seeing as a result. Maybe we can start at a general level, as we think about the industry responding to these mega trends, kind of where is the mobile equipment industry finding the best opportunities right now?
Well, I think the best opportunities are always going to fall out of something that benefits the most people. So if you think about, population growth and climate, well, sustainability becomes the metric. And sustainability, I feel like over the last couple years has really stepped forward as a major metric. It's not just a buzzword anymore. It's now something that companies are committing to. They're stating public metrics and really committing beyond even even if it costs a little bit more, they're willing to pursue a sustainable solution because it's the right thing to do. So given that, electrification is the natural outflow. Electrification can deliver sustainability and additional benefits that we can talk about in a little bit later. It enables the IoT, predictive maintenance, all of these kind of things. But so electrification through sustainability is really the first one I see as a market driver. Probably not a huge surprise to many, but I think how pervasive electrification is getting, I think, may be a little bit of a surprise to some, and the different ways it can be used to help.
Yeah. We certainly, see that in the marketplace already. I mean, electrification, and by electrification, that's a term that means a lot of different things, depending on
it certainly does.
What part of the supply chain you're sitting in. But I think for our purposes, we're talking about the, electrifying the power source on off-highway equipment of one kind or another, right? So in the fluid power space, the hydraulics that power the actuation functions, the lifting of the bucket, if you will, or, are still present on those electrified machines, but that creates a lot of technical challenges to marry them to electric power sources rather than internal combustion engines, right? So that's the piece of electrification that the industry is feeling and creating solutions for currently. But it was interesting to hear you tie that directly to the sustainability efforts. It seems to me that, as you said, we're starting to see customer pull through on sustainability initiatives, right? So for a long time, it was sustainable for sustainability's sake, but now it's almost a customer demand. For those more efficient machines and for those lower, and that ties back to, I think, some of the regulatory issues that you described at the beginning. So it's interesting that there's such a focus on that in terms of the opportunities that are present. Can you talk a little bit more about that space?
Yeah, I mean, imagine something is a real point of emphasis when executives are willing to pay to get it.
Yeah.
And so I think as engineers, we look at internal combustion and say that 30% efficiency on a good day is no longer acceptable. I mean, it's been acceptable for over 100 years, but what an opportunity that is. You're throwing away 70% waste energy that could be used for any number of things, either heating or power recovery, braking, any of it. And, I just think sustainability has really created the platform to say, all right, we're no longer willing to accept 30%. We can do better than that. And electrification, rough numbers, more than doubles that. So here's an easy way to double your efficiency and also help the planet. So we can be meeting our commitments, meeting our sustainability goals, and improving our performance, and energy consumption.
Right. You also talk in the white paper a little bit about an opportunity around supply chain resiliency. I know the supply chain is a major challenge for everyone right now, and probably, unfortunately, will still be a challenge by the time the IFPE show rolls around in March. Can you talk a little bit about that and how companies are better positioning themselves in that environment?
Yeah, I think the last 2 years have certainly created more buzz around supply chain than any time I can remember. I mean, it just seems to be all anybody thinks about.
Yep.
And so, the logical question is, well, how can you adapt to make sure that doesn't happen again when you can't predict demand as well as you thought you could? And this idea of just minimize inventory cost and just in time manufacturing, I think all those things are valid and useful, but that has to be balanced against resilience. You need to be able to respond to large fluctuations in demand, either because of a good market condition or an adverse. Even excessive demand isn't necessarily a good thing, because you can't plan for it, and all of a sudden your customer's asking you to fill orders that you can't do,
Right.
turning them into the arms of your competitor. So even can I buy more than you have isn't a good thing. Is on the surface it may seem like it is. So this idea of resilience and how to best incorporate that without just making excessive amounts of everything and storing it,
Right.
I think is important.
Yeah. It poses a lot of additional challenge, and they're finding creative ways. Obviously, they need to, because they need to continue to deliver the product to the market. So, Adam, we've talked about the megatrends that are affecting everyone. We're talking about what pressures that's putting on the mobile equipment manufacturers, and what are some of the opportunities that they're now taking advantage of. The last part of the white paper really gets into innovations, for lack of a better word, that we're seeing specifically within the fluid power, power transmission, motion control side. And I'm hoping you can go through some of those innovations, because that's more than likely what people are going to see on the show floor when they go to IFPE in March. These kinds of new technologies that are coming on. Where do you want to start with that? There's many that are described in the white paper.
Yeah, I mean, I figured we could probably talk through some of the power transmission advancements, and I could hit I think motion control is the second part of that.
Yeah,
we can
right.
talk about that briefly at the end. And I'll preface all of this by saying, again, I haven't spent my whole career in fluid power. So, I mean, these are general trends and innovations that I've seen. If you want to know how this could help you and how to implement, I would strongly direct you to the show,
Right.
for the how. But I can maybe help provide the what a little bit about some of these. So I think the first one is dynamic line ratings and flexible transmission control. This is interesting because, to me, I mean, using real-time temperature or sag measurements to compute the line rating is a way to start getting smarter about how to do this. So, I mean, there's sensors are the key to all of this. I mean, any smart technology is going to start and end with sensors. More data allows computing software to help analyze and predict and process things. So the technology can monitor the asset health and then tie swings to performance in an alert for operators, so that it can take that, maybe a trend in the data it's reading, and react, and to help minimize the time from a change in signal to an operator response, which really, I think, is an impactful advantage. I mean, if somebody's not looking, I mean, there's human error involved in not doing it this way. Automating it just helps everyone out, most especially the operator.
Yeah, the automated functionality is something that we're seeing in the fluid power space beginning to happen. It's still a challenge. I mean, the sensor technology is well advanced, but it's really the controller. It's the logic. It's the programming that the responsiveness that we're beginning to see automated functions as well. It sounds like you talk a lot about that in the white paper.
Yeah, one of my other favorite things about it is it's starting to enable modular hydraulic equipment, which only helps with flexibility and customization. I mean, there does seem to be a general trend overall for decentralization. I mean, in the computing industry, it's called moving to the edge, but operating closer to the point of use. You save in transportation. Often you don't need as big of equipment or as complicated equipment. You can have a more specialized or flexible approach. Digitizing and having these dynamic ratings can really help with the customization, which seems to be, most seem to want a tailored solution.
Yeah.
And so how can we get closer to that state? This is a nice way to do that.
Right. You also talk about digital displacement pumps in the white paper as one of these innovations. Can you tell us more about what that is?
Sure. Historically, design engineers kind of used pressure control for system performance. And so when you pivot that to monitor additional factors, load sensing, power thresholds, flow distributions, all those factors can then be used to optimize things. And so if you remember I mentioned the 30% combustion efficiency. That's really where you could start to address some of that. And even, as combustion's still pervasive in the market, how do we get as close to optimal combustion efficiency as we can? Well, you take the monitor and controls and kind of digitize that versus the pressure control. So the DDP is a nice tool that allows you to do that.
Yep. And there are many of those already on the market, as we've talked about, that different companies are coming forward with. What are some other areas that you've identified?
Well, the idea of energy storage and waste heat recovery is something I like. I've worked in the past in designing waste heat recovery heat exchangers, and mainly for heavy duty on-road trucks. And this is basically scraping a few percentage of efficiency gain off and giving it back to the system performance, with the benefit of getting more out with less, but at the cost of additional components. But again, you have 70% available energy. So learning how to creatively harness some of that and reapply it is an easy, well, I don't know how easy it is, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And
right.
So, with these heavy duty hydraulic mobile applications, they have a high power ratio. So having an accumulator can store waste, kinetic, and peak power excess energy for use later on. And it ends up kind of being like a battery where you could kind of have more on demand excess energy. And so I just think that's really appealing. It ticks about every box we've discussed. Sustainability, better efficiency, better performance, getting more with less. All of this is really addressed by the energy storage and waste heat.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And that kind of, and I think it's just a more general point of electrification. Thinking of creative ways to help electrify processes that, historically haven't been. Electrification lends itself to smart technology optimization. It's connected. And so once you connect it, you can control it. Once you can control it, you can optimize it. And so, maybe some of the best solutions haven't even been created yet, but this movement that started certainly is going to create even more of a chance to do that. And I'm excited at the thought of, at the show, who knows what other ideas might be there for companies that have solved this problem in other areas.
Yeah, well, that's a great overview of some of the cutting edge advancements that are present and coming. My own little window into the fluid power industry, I see a lot of innovation and a lot of new system architectures that are trying to accomplish what you're describing there. When we compare and contrast fluid power technology to all electric technologies, the use of batteries and things like that, that accumulator really provides a way to quickly store and tap energy when needed, which is kind of one of those must-haves out there on the job site, if you know what I mean. So
for sure,
it's a much different architecture when you take the hydraulics out of it than when you rely on that power density on that energy capture structure. So that's great to hear that you picked up on that as well. That those innovations will certainly be present at the show, as you said. I also wanted to ask about any challenges or barriers to adoption. We talked about some great innovations that are present and coming to market. Why are they only cutting edge? Why are they not ubiquitous in the market? I know you talk about that.
Yeah, you want it in the middle, not on the edge. That's where we're trying to get things. The main one that I see is just the desire to maintain the status quo. If something's worked for a long time, there seems to be this idea that, well, kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So there's a lot of legacy technology, and admittedly, some capital assets that have been depreciated. People are trying to get as much mileage out of it as possible. So then with a new technology, they try and kind of bolt it on or add it to the existing versus a more elegant integrated solution.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that happens, inefficiency follows. So while it might be possible, it may not be the right thing to do. And then it just becomes a business case. I mean, there might be, okay, if we do this for a few more years and design a more integrated way to, to integrate some of these solutions, we might be able to realize, it may take us another year or two to get the full benefit, but maybe the benefits are deeper and we could kind of pay it back,
right,
so to speak, later on. And to the point of payback, cost is always going to be a limitation. Minimizing capital outlay, which is another reason that, localized, decentralized, I guess, technologies are becoming a little bit more emphasized, but not just cost and the equipment, but training. You need operators to operate this kind of technology, and as it gets more complicated, so does the knowledge base that's needed to operate it.
Right.
And so those do tend to be, barriers. How do we get people the training they need to be effective to leverage the benefits of the new tools?
Right.
And the last, I guess, ones would just be customization and supply chain resilience. They're a little bit in conflict for customized solutions, but they also want supply chain resilience. Well, if everybody just used the same design, you could make 1 billion of them and have them everywhere,
right,
but it's not customized yet. So how do you balance that? And I think, one barrier is just an unoptimized or suboptimized attempt at customization that kind of compromises supply chain resilience. So having to, finding that peak, that sweet spot that gives you both, would help.
Well, and as you said earlier, to borrow your words, it's really at the show where people can, meet with the experts and the engineers who can help them through all of those challenges, right? That's really kind of one of the reasons to still come together for in-person trade shows. It's very important for those educations and dialogues to take place in that environment with the technology right there on the floor for people to experiment with and to see how it actually works.
Well, and people just seem that work in this every day love to hear other ideas and perspectives. I mean, they love to share an idea and hear feedback on it, maybe look at things a different way. And some of the best ideas come from an objective viewpoint of something that maybe somebody spent 10 years developing or less, or, something like that. But just, what else could be done with this? Have you thought about this? I mean, those are natural, organic conversations that really can only happen in person.
Exactly. Well, Adam, I feel like we've really just kind of scratched the surface. I mean, the white paper, as I described it, is we've kind of done a good job, I think, highlighting the major points in it, but there's a lot of more information there. So we really would encourage people to go download it from the show notes and take a look, and then join us for the show in March. Do you have any last parting thoughts or key takeaways that you want to leave our audience with as they make those preparations?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the industry conversations I've been having, I mean, there's been certainly some things that come together in addition to, I mean, the mega trends are there, but when you hear what are the people in industry thinking, it really feels to me like the thing people want the most is technology that enables efficiency. Writing another paper right now for IFPE about, how technology is enabling electrification, but more broadly efficiency. And then how do you get just the max efficiency possible without, over designing things? It just seems like that's at the top of everybody's mind. And so as you go to the show, that'll be, I think, a major point of the discussions and the presentations that happen.
That'd be great. We'll look forward to seeing that work as well. If I understand that right, you're actually speaking with technology providers that are going to be at the show to provide some content for that white paper, right?
Yeah, we've had some really enriching conversations with 5 industry experts that, could talk much more about this than I could. So, sometimes it's better to get info from the experts, but this paper should really be full of insights and thoughts and things that they're excited about, in the industry as well. So that'll be a fun paper to write.
Well, we'll look forward to that, as I said before. And that is going to wrap things up for this episode of Fluid Power Forum. So my thanks to Adam Kimmel, who has been my guest on this episode. As we've said many times, if you want to connect with him, the best way to do that is to go to the show notes. We'll put a link to his email there. You can either download the white paper or you can email him directly. If you want to learn more about some of his future products or some of the other services that he can provide. And so, of course, to learn more about the topics we've discussed on our show, your best bet is to attend IFPE, the International Fluid Power Exposition. where you can see firsthand the latest fluid power technology advancements and learn from those industry experts. That next show is going to be March of 2023 in Las Vegas, Nevada. For more information, visit IFPE.com. Remember also, if you like our podcast, follow us on Twitter. We're there at the NFPA. And please keep sharing those interesting and innovative uses of fluid power with our hashtag #OnlyFluidPowerCan. Fluid Power Forum is a podcast of the National Fluid Power Association. I'm your host, Eric Lenke, reminding you to join us next time in the forum.